I was savoring my Saturday morning coffee, the kind of quiet moment you guard fiercely in a small town like Willow Creek, when I spotted a flock of pastel balloons drifting over my backyard fence like a sugary cloud. At first, I figured some kid down the street had gotten carried away with helium, but then the scent of grilled shrimp and the sharp click of heels on my patio told a different story. There, in the middle of my yard, like she was hosting a gala at the town's fanciest venue, stood Margaret Hensley, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, sporting a sequined sash that screamed Mother of the Bride. She was barking orders at a crew of women unloading champagne flutes from crates. My patio chairs were draped in crisp white linens, a long lace-skirted table stretched across the deck, and my pool's control panel was buried under a heap of peonies. The audacity? Not one of them had bothered to knock on my door to ask if they could commandeer my property. This wasn't a stranger's oversight. Margaret knew me. She knew my name, my address, and, thanks to her relentless HOA emails, probably the exact brand of cereal I'd bought last week. I'd endured enough of her friendly reminders about mailbox colors and hedge trims to know she fancied herself the queen of Willow Creek. But throwing a full-blown bridal shower in my backyard without so much as a text? That was a new level of nerve. I stepped onto the patio in my sweatpants, coffee in hand, and got a look from Margaret like I was a delivery guy who'd shown up empty-handed. "Oh, there you are, Daniel," she said, as if I'd kept her waiting. "We needed a bigger venue, and everyone agreed your pool was perfect. You didn't answer your phone this morning, so I figured it was fine." She didn't pause to gauge my reaction, just waved at the caterers to stack the lavender macarons higher. "It's my daughter's big day," she added, her voice softening just enough to feign warmth, though it reeked of control. I scanned the scene. A dozen women in sundresses, sipping mimosas from my own glassware, lounging in my chairs, all acting like this was a public park. It wasn't malice, it was worse. They assumed Margaret's authority extended to my property line. I asked what she'd have done if I'd said no. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Don't be ridiculous, Daniel. It's not like you were using the space." The words landed like a slap, my coffee turning bitter in my grip. Confronting her now would make me the bad guy, the grumpy neighbor who ruined the vibe. But if I played along, I could pick my moment to flip the script. So, I smiled, told her I hoped they'd have a blast, and watched her beam with triumph, oblivious to the storm brewing. I took a slow walk around my hijacked yard, noting the rearranged furniture, the platters swiped from my kitchen, and, most crucially, how close her floral centerpiece sat to my pool's wave machine. I'd installed it last summer for lap training, but it had a setting that could churn the water like a hurricane. Nobody knew that but me. Inside, I checked my phone and found a notification in the HOA group chat, a photo of my patio, captioned, "Perfect spot for the perfect bride-to-be. Thanks to our generous neighbor, Daniel, for sharing." I stared at it, wondering if they believed this fiction or if they just went along because challenging Margaret was harder than free shrimp. The comments poured in here at emojis, praise for the setup. By noon, a DJ had set up near the deep end, bass thumping through my walls. I changed into jeans, my mind already mapping out a plan. This wasn't about noise or trespassing, Anna Maria, it was about principle. If Margaret thought my yard was her playground, I'd remind her it wasn't, in a way she'd never forget. I needed a spark, something undeniable. Then I saw it. Open champagne bottles teetering near the pool's edge, tipsy guests splashing water as they dangled their feet in the shallow end. One giggled, saying the water was too calm. That was my cue. I stepped outside, casual as ever, and mentioned the pool had some fun features they might enjoy. Margaret's eyes lit up. "Like what?" she asked, probably picturing a light show. I told her to wait and see. I strolled to the control panel, feeling every gaze shift my way, and flipped it to storm mode. The first wave hit, a gentle ripple that made the guests cheer. The second was bigger, sending two women scrambling backward with shrieks. By the third, the water roared, soaking Margaret's dress and toppling the DJ's speaker. Macarons flew, champagne spilled, and her perfect party dissolved into chaos. She shouted for me to stop, but I leaned against the fence, watching the scene unravel, hairdos ruined, tablecloths sinking into the pool. When the waves finally slowed, the deck looked like a shipwreck. Margaret marched over, dripping, and hissed, "What's wrong with you?" I shrugged. just showing off the features you were so excited about. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut as she stormed off to herd her soggy guests. I knew this wasn't the end. By Sunday, an HOA email hit my inbox. Urgent. Property misconduct. Margaret painted me as a menace who'd endangered her guests with reckless equipment. The email went to the entire board and membership, and by Monday, neighbors were whispering, casting me as the villain. I didn't reply letting her stew was sweeter. Instead, I prepared for the next HOA meeting, pulling bylaws, permits, and neighbor testimonies confirming Margaret had claimed I'd loaned the space. At the meeting, I laid it all out calmly. My private pool, my approved equipment, her unfiled event. I showed her own group chat post, thanking me for hosting. When a board member asked why I'd turned on the wave machine, I smiled. The bride's guests said the water was boring. I wanted to be a good host. The room chuckled, and Margaret's grip loosened. The fine she pushed for failed 4 votes to 4, 1 abstention. I walked out, victory quiet but sharp. But Margaret wasn't done. A new email proposed a bylaw amendment to let the HOA use private amenities for community events. It was her retaliation, dressed up as unity. I fought back, not with anger but with calm conversations, asking neighbors if they'd want the HOA booking their yards without consent. Most said no. I printed flyers, simple and stark, warning, your backyard could be next, and delivered them door to door. Margaret countered with glossy propaganda featuring my pool, but the vote came, and her amendment failed 32 to 25. She glared as I left, her words sharp but hollow. You've made this personal. I replied, you did that when you walked into my yard. Her next move was predictable: a $750 fine for my unapproved wave machine, despite its permits. At the compliance hearing, I presented my documentation, then flipped the script, revealing her unpermitted gazebo. The room went silent, and the fine was tabled. But Margaret kept pushing. She announced a neighborhood bash at her house, claiming my pool as an overflow venue. I shut it down publicly, locking my gates and posting no trespassing signs. When she led guests to my pool anyway, I activated the wave machine's custom mode, gentle at first, then a full-on surf that sent her party scrambling. She called the cops, but my permits held, and the officer left shaking his head. By fall, Margaret's influence waned. Stories of her overreach spread, and she faded from HOA events. My pool sat quiet, a reminder of the day she clung to my deck chair, waves crashing around her. It wasn't just about winning, it was about drawing a line. And if she ever forgot, my wave machine was ready. What do you think? Was I too harsh, or did Margaret deserve it? Should HOAs have power over private property, or is that a step too far? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.